Hello and welcome to a Sunny Book Nook. Today I'm going to be going through all of the books that I read in November. My name is Sunny, I use they them pronouns. Let's just get into it. So we're going to be going through the books that I read from the beginning of the month all the way to the end of the month. The first book that I read in the month I already talked about in my October wrap-up, and I loved it. It was All's Well by Mona Awad. Gave it 5 stars. Go watch my October wrap-up if you haven't already. So the next first book that I read was Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I have read Margaret Rogerson's, I think, The Ravens one. I really liked it, which I didn't expect because it's like a fucking, I don't know, hetero, like fairy romance fantasy book, but I think it was actually like really good. So I'm excited to get to this. And this book, there wasn't any romance at all, and like I really enjoyed that. And we're following like this nun saint figure. It's really dark and gothic, and I think that the magic and the religious system was really interesting and well fleshed out, and our characters were also interesting and well fleshed out. I honestly don't really remember that much of this book, but I do remember that I liked it, so I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I read was Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulke. This book is a new release, and it is structured as like a bunch of Slack messages, and one of the characters gets sucked into the Slack bot machine, like robot, and like becomes the Slack bot. And it's a really interesting sort of like meta look at technology and capitalism and the workforce. I really liked it. I thought it was really smart. There's also like a queer male-male romance throughout it that I thought was also done very subtly and well, and it was really well integrated into the story. I honestly thought it was kind of delightful, even though it's talking about some of these more heavy, like, darker meta elements of technology and the ways that it's, you know, present in our lives and in our workforce, but I still think it was really solid, so I also rated that book 4 stars. The next book that I read was a middle grade fantasy called The Troubled Girls of Dragomir Academy by Ursu. It is a really interesting world where magic exists, but it's like only in boys apparently, and so we're in this like family, and there's a sister and a brother, and the brother has like his whole life been told like, oh, he's gonna be a sorcerer, like everyone's gonna, like, he's gonna go to the really renowned academy run by like the magical government or whatever and bring a lot of prestige and money to the family. But on the day that he does his like sorcery test, the sister like kind of fucks it up. Basically she's like really treated poorly by her family because she's a girl and she's not known to like have magic, because girls don't have magic in this world, and she is someone who like really likes goats and the farm animals, and basically she gets sent off to a school for troubled girls, where there's like a lot of really strict discipline and stuff. And we learn more about the world and the narratives that like are being hidden and uncovered throughout it, and I think it was a really good like feminist text for, you know, like middle grade readers, and I think that it did a lot of the tropes that middle grade does with like the school academy, and also I feel like so many middle grade books feature a main character, like middle grade fantasy specifically, feature a main character who is really shunned by everyone in society, and particularly their family. Like I'm thinking Matilda, Harry Potter, like, you know, a bunch of books are about like an outcast main character who ends up finding like herself, and that's totally what this book is, and I rated it 3.5 stars because I think that there were a lot of points that for me as like an adult reader was really frustrating, because I'm obviously not the intended age range for the audience, so like that makes sense why it's frustrating. It's not really the book's fault, it's like my fault for not being the targeted audience, I suppose, but that's why I didn't really enjoy it that much. Like, so my rating is more about the personal enjoyment element, not the story itself, which is, you know, all my ratings are a combination of like what I think of the book itself and my own like feelings towards it. So yeah, that was a 3.5 star book for me. The next book I have right here that I read in the month of November is Lagoon by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a really fun, campy alien invasion story set in Lagos. We're following a bunch of these different characters as they deal with this alien invasion. There's a climate element to this, and it sort of it's very like Afrofuturist and turns a lot of tropes on its head and looks at an alien narrative, an alien colonization narrative in like a post-colonial lens. Like, what does it mean for alien colonization to happen in a country that has already faced like real colonization, but also like what are the intentions of these aliens? They're here to stay, so what does that mean? And like, we see all the different political and interpersonal ways that it plays out. Particularly, I think the main character is a marine biologist, and she has like witchy magical characteristics as well. There's a lot of, I think, magical realism and sci-fi integrated throughout this story that feels still really grounded and real. I liked it. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really fast-paced. It felt like a thriller action sci-fi movie. And I've read, I feel like at this point, a lot of Nnedi Okorafor books, and I really enjoy her writing in general, so I rated it 3.5 stars, not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I did enjoy it, but it didn't necessarily blow me away in any particular way, if that makes sense. I feel like a lot of her books kind of do that for me, where I enjoy her writing and I enjoy her stories, but they don't really like take me there in the way I think other narratives and other books in this genre sort of do. So that's going back on my red shelf. Okay, there's so many 3.5 star ratings towards the beginning of this, so just prepare yourself for that more. The next book that I read was I Love You, But I've Chosen Darkness by Vaye Watkins. This is a book about a middle-aged, like, mother who, like, a young mother. She's recently, like, given birth, and she is going out west to, like, find herself, and it's, like, about her exploration of her own past and history and the American Southwest. It's really rooted in the American Southwest. This is also a pretty new release, I'm pretty sure, and her father, who has since passed away, was one of the Charles Manson cult, like, recruiters, so that's another interesting element of the story. So yeah, I thought this was pretty good. I think that it explored the themes of, like, motherhood in an interesting way, and, like, the isolation of womanhood, and, like, what it means to be a writer, because our main character is a writer and an academic, and it's like it features pretty prominently throughout the story. So yeah, I thought it was solid, but again, like, it wasn't necessarily the book's fault. I just don't think I am necessarily the targeted audience for this type of book, so I rated it 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was Snowflake by Louise Nealon. This book is a depressed woman type of book. It's following this girl who is like a freshman in college, and she lives on a farm in, like, rural Ireland in a small town, and her mother has, like, a lot of mental illness, and she lives with her mother and her uncle, so her mother's brother. She's very quiet. She kind of, like, keeps to herself. I think it was compared to, like, Sally Rooney, because all millennial Irish women authors get compared to her, I swear to God, like, if they're writing in this literary sort of coming-of-age genre, which I guess makes sense, because, you know, that is a genre that Miss Sally Rooney really, like, pioneered. But yeah, I mean, I think this book was really atmospheric and, like, gloomy, and for that I really enjoyed it, and I think that Sally Rooney readers will enjoy this. That's fair, but also I just think it's funny that they make that comparison a lot. So I rated this book like 3.5, 4 stars, because I love a depressed young woman book, and I think that the way that this book sort of, like, looked at desire and interpersonal relationships and stuff was really interesting and heartbreaking in some ways. It also kind of reminded me of, like, Eleanor Oliphant, but not as, like, campy. It's definitely more, like, sad. The next book I read was A Little Sleep by Paul Tremblay. This is the first book in a detective series, and we're following this private detective who has narcolepsy, and I think it was really fun and campy, and it's set in Boston, so that's where I'm located right now, and so I thought that was interesting. There's, like, a lot of, like, police mob ties situation going on. There's, like, stalking, pictures of a politician's daughter. It's interesting. It kind of reminded me of, oh my gosh, what's her name? Jane Evanovic books, or yeah, kind of like that. I think that this sort of, like, campy tone of, like, thriller mysteries is interesting, but our main character is sort of the self-deprecating man who is, I think, maybe, like, a veteran of some sort, and y'all know how I feel about the U.S. military, so, like, I just thought it was fine. It was literally fine. And it was fun, but not memorable, and I just didn't really care that much, but I think that it was, like, in itself, like, a fine written book. I feel like that's a theme for my November read, so this was a 3-star. The next book that I read was 5 Tuesdays in Winter by Lily King, and I actually like this one. I rated this one 4 stars. I thought that it was both good and well constructed and something that I, like myself, enjoyed and was to my taste. This is a short story collection. I don't know, I think it's released at this point, but I listened to it via the Libro FM influencer program, so thank you so much to them. This collection of short stories sort of ranges in perspectives and ages, but it really has to do with like these intimate personal relationships and motherhood and young womanhood and coming of age and all these different like glimpses into people's lives that I thought was so like intimate and lovely, and I really enjoyed a lot of these stories, and a lot of them were very memorable for me. Like I can still kind of tell you the plots of a lot of these short stories, which I think is not really true for a lot of short story collections, so I think this is a really strong one. Very good literary fiction writing. Like I understand why people like Lily King's writing, even though this is the only book of hers that I've like picked up and fully read, so 4 stars. The next book that I read was a reread, and that is Princess Flordalinda and the 40 Flight Tower by Tamsyn Muir. Ugh, I reread this book so often. I've reread this book so many times this year because it is just the perfect novella, perfect sapphic fairy tale retelling. Very lighthearted, but also grim, because like she's literally fighting for her life getting through this tower, and we see so much growth from our main character, Flordalinda, whom I love, and like this book does the whole girl boss feminism thing, like in it well, like it's good, and it's really cute. There's like a fairy involved, and they have like this banter and this sort of like relationship that has animosity to it. Yeah, I really love this book. It's a 5-star read. It's one of my favorites of the year for sure, and that's why I had to reread it. It's just such a perfect, cozy little book. The next book that I read was Among Thieves by M.J. Kuhn. M.J. Kuhn? I don't know. Anyway, I hated this book. I thought it was really bad, and yeah, I really don't remember what this is about beyond like the fact that it's a heist story and thus was compared to like Six of Crows or whatever. Not that I've read Six of Crows. I refuse to read Lee Bardugo. But yeah, I mean, this wasn't for me. I rated it 2 stars. I thought it was juvenile. I thought it was silly. I didn't like it, so. Young adult fantasy in heist stories, I don't know if it's for me. I don't know. I don't think it is. The next book that I read is In the Shadow of the Spindrift House by Mira Grant. Mira Grant is a pseudonym, like a pen name for Shauna Maguire, like when she writes horror, I'm pretty sure, and this is a unconventional haunted house story following this like group of kids from a small town who have like a detective agency, and one of them decides to like go to this house to figure out who, like, which one of the 3 families that have ownership over it actually like has the deed and the rights to the house, and it's like by the sea, I think in like, I don't know, fucking Maine or something. It has those really gloomy seashore northeast vibes, and the house is obviously like really creepy, and there's this friendship group dynamic of these childhood friends and the way that it shifts, and it was really creepy, unsettling, and horrifying. But I think what really sticks out in the story, and I think what Shauna Maguire / Mira Grant is like really doing at this story, is looking at like family history, family trauma, the ties that bind us, and the people that we keep in our lives and the people that we love. And our main character is this girl who is an orphan and who has been like basically taken in by her best friends for most of her life, and she is like in unrequited love with her best friend. It's like this sapphic thing. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really solid horror novel. I rated it 3.5 stars. It's an unconventional haunted house story. I feel like I've read so many unconventional haunted house stories at this point that I can do my own sort of like recommendation video describing them if you want that. Oh, and in this book, there's like all the characters in it are like super like neurodivergent. It's also a coming of age story as well, but also like it is horror, so beware. The next book that I read was Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. I rated this book 3 stars. I rate all of the books in the Murderbot series 3 stars. I think they're all really solid. I think the voice of Murderbot as a character is like good and funny, and the world is like really intelligent, and the exploration of like human, robot, and technology like relationships and the political implications of that, I think is explored well. The reason why I read this book is because I'm doing a reading vlog of like the sci-fi nomination Goodreads Awards written by women books, but like it's not going that well right now. I've been so hopefully you'll get that vlog at some point. This video will probably come out before the vlog, but I'm just gonna talk about the books that I talk about in the vlog anyways. But in the vlog you'll see like my live reactions to it. So yeah, anyway. So then of course the next book that I read after that was Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells, which is the next book in the series, and again another novella in the Murderbot series, another 3-star book. Like, I thought it was good and I thought it was fun. So I think that the way that this series has like escalated and elevated itself throughout the course of the novels or of the novellas is really solid. I think Martha Wells really knows what she's doing. The next book that I read was a 5-star read. My first 5-star read of the month, and oh boy, did it blow me away. Well, first 5-star read that wasn't a reread, because obviously Princess Flordalinda, always a 5-star. But this book is Firebreak by Nicole Kornher-Stace. This book is a dystopian sci-fi novel. It's set in a future where 2 corporations like run all of America. America as a state has like dissolved. It's just these 2 corporations now, Greenleaf and Stellaxis, and the corporate wars have like orphaned a whole generation of kids. And we're following our main character, who is one of the war orphans, and now she's like a young adult and she's living in this abandoned hotel along with many other people in her community in something called Old Town, which is like right outside the city itself, that because they're in the Stellaxis part of this corporate like space, and so Stellaxis like provides all of their water and electricity and like they run everything basically, right? So our main character and her best friend Jessa are gaming streamers, and it functions in a similar way that like streaming and gaming functions in current day society, where like people will tip their favorite streamers. But the interesting thing about the game that they play is that it's a first person shooter type of game that sort of replicates the corporate wars. So you end up taking on the avatar of like a soldier in the war, and you're fighting, so it's like similar to like Black Ops, stuff like that. I don't play video games, I don't know. But because of this, that's how they make most of their income. Our main character is also a dog walker. Like, everyone works a bunch of jobs, a bunch of gigs to like stay alive and have enough money to get water, which is rationed extremely tightly. And in this world there's also these celebrity super soldiers who are, Stellaxis like says that they are these like manufactured robot human technology that like go fight on the front lines of the corporate war, and they have such celebrity status. They're like the only types of celebrity that we really get to see in this world, that like our main character's best friend Jessa collects all these like posters of all of them, and these celebrity super soldiers are referred to by numbers. Like there's 02, there's 08, there's like 40, I don't know, there's these different numbers. The inciting incident is that this girl, our main character and her gaming partner get roped into some sort of task that is going to like fund them, and things unravel from there. We learn more about the world, we learn more about the structure and the system behind all of this, and it's very action-packed, it's very fast-paced, it's just phenomenal. It's so good, and I fucking adored it. It put me through it. Like, it dragged me through the trenches. And it was so visceral, and our main character was so real, and she becomes the face of this movement on social media throughout the course of the book. And, like, I think the way that technology, social media, and resources, and, like, limited, and, like, false scarcity was sort of, and also, like, corporate control and war was tied into this story, created a really, really strong anti-capitalist, anti-war. I think it was so smart. I really liked it. And it was fun as well. So yeah, definitely a favorite of the year. The next book that I read in the month of November was A Cathedral of Myth and Bone by Kat Howard. This is another short story collection, and I enjoyed this one a lot too. I rated it 4 stars. It sort of reminds me of Carmen Maria Machado's Her Body and Other Parties, because it does the sort of fairy tale canonical retelling situation, mythological retellings from a feminist standpoint, and it has very rich, dreamy melancholic, melodramatic writing, and there's a really fun retelling of, well, not fun, some tragic and epic retellings of King Arthur and the knights, you know what I mean. There's like a unicorn story, there's like so many stories that play with time and the act of storytelling and narrative and just like feminist fiction. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a solid collection. I thought it was good. And I think people who enjoy Carmen Maria Machado's writing would enjoy this. I think this book is sort of a little bit more of a juvenile taste of that, but a little bit more, a bit more fantastical, I would say. So, yeah. I liked this, and I don't think it gets enough attention or hype, so check it out. The next book that I read was The Factory Witches of Lowell by C.S. Malerich. This book was so lovely. I think it's a novella, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's set in like the 19th century New England, and it's about these girls who work at a factory and their efforts to unionize and how it kind of is combined with witchcraft. Another lesbian, anti-capitalist, queer, historical, like period piece sort of book that like I really enjoyed. I thought was so good. Definitely check that out. I think it might be a Scribd original or Scribd exclusive, so if you have a Scribd subscription, like, you should read this. You should really read this, because I liked it a lot. That the way that the relationships and the house dynamics and the political factions and the reasons for people's, like, the intentions behind people's actions were really well done. It's a really well done story, in my opinion. So, yeah. I rated it 4 stars. Because, again, another 4-star read, and that is Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. This is getting a lot of hype and buzz right now. It's a novella published by Tor, of course, and it's a horror story, and it's very deeply biblical. It is deeply feminist, and it is horrifying. It is about a woman who lives in this perfect community, but, you know, things are not as perfect as they seem, obviously, and she starts discovering weird things in her husband's house. There's this newcomer in town, and there's the women of the community, and all of these things create a lot of tension and a lot of masterful, magical entangling and disentangling. It's definitely really creepy. It creeped me out, but I don't think it's necessarily, like, scary. I think it's unsettling in how meta it is, I guess. So, yeah, 4-star book. The next book that I read was again from my reading vlog, and that was Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is a space opera romance mystery, and I liked it a lot. I thought the queer ML romance between this prince who gets like an arranged marriage to a diplomat from a recently like annexed, is that the word, annexed, when you take another country or state, or in this case planet, into the empire, when you unfold into the empire, I don't know. So basically this book has a lot of like political elements to it, because we get the dual perspective, like, romance novel thing, and the diplomat who is from the more, like, I guess, like, non-conventional, culturally, like, outside planet and culture, he has just gotten out of a marriage with the prince that he is now married to, the prince's cousin, and the relationship that the diplomat and the cousin had was very abusive, so definitely look up trigger warnings before getting into this book, because that was really difficult for me to read. And our main character, the prince, is this really, like, happy-go-lucky, like, party boy type of guy, and he has a reputation for being kind of, like, I don't know, like, a playboy and, like, getting in trouble, but he's, like, a very peppy, chatty, charismatic person, and the diplomat is more of, like, a dark, brooding sort of figure who is still very compliant and kind of repressed. So I think that this story was a really cute, grumpy sunshine situation, but It very much is concerned with the mystery of what actually happened with the death of the former husband, and also the political reckonings of this world and the implications of what's going on. And I think that the universe of this world wasn't like that fleshed out, and a lot of these relationships were fleshed out, so like what we understood of the world building was all we needed to know for the way that the politics of this empire and of this world sort of operates on. So I thought it was really sweet, and I think there were elements that were really hard-hitting, and the plot was well-paced, so yeah, I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I read was another sci-fi space opera, well, not space opera, because it's not, another sci-fi book that has to do with space, and that is To Be Taught, If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This book is a novella, and it is formatted as a letter from an astronaut to, I think, like planet Earth, sort of a recounting of her experiences going to space on a space expedition. There's a lot of conversation within this book itself about the ethics of space travel and scientific exploration on other planets, and we get a lot of that sort of dynamic of the crew. It reminded me of like a much shorter, much less melodramatic, much more mature version of, oh my god, what's the book called? I'll put it up here. It reminded me of this book a lot. It's like following these people who go on a spaceship to go explore, and it's like part of this mission that the whole world is like really excited about. And this book very much takes on the perspective of a scientist. Like, she writes in her letter herself, like, as a scientist, we approach this in this way, in XY way, and so when this happened, and because she's, like, talking about her experience in the aftermath of it, it's all kind of, like, written in the past tense, where she's like, when we got to this planet, we did this, and I think it was really smart for Becky Chambers to do this, and I think Chambers is just a really good sci-fi novelist, honestly, and I think, you know, both the novellas that I read from her are really good, so I really liked this, and I thought that it was really smart and had a lot of like soul and asked a lot of very good questions and answered a lot of really good questions. So yeah, I rated this book 4 stars. Oh my god, the book is called Do You Dream of Terra too? Oh, I also wrote in my Goodreads review, by the way, you can always friend me on Goodreads, just write in my like challenge question box that you know me from YouTube, otherwise I decline the friend request. Anyway, the book that I was talking about was, yeah, Do You Dream of Terra 2, but also in my review I mentioned how this book kind of reminds me of the short story Vaster Than Empires by Ursula Le Guin, which is, I think, like the blueprint for stories about space travel to another planet, featuring like a group of scientists who all have different roles, and the way that those scientists interact with the planet that they go on, and also the way that those scientists interact with each other. It's a brilliant short story. You need to read it if you haven't already. Le Guin kind of invented modern sci-fi as we know it, so anyway, going off on a tangent there. The next book that I read was another book for my vlog, and that is Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor, another Okorafor, and this is a novella about a young girl named Sankofa, or she has many names throughout the novella, but that is the name I'm going to use for her, and she basically, as a young child, ends up getting some sort of magical situation thrust onto her, and so she, like, travels around, and she, like, her magic makes it so that she accidentally, like, kills her whole family, and so she feels a lot of guilt for that, obviously, and loneliness, because she was so young when it happened, maybe, like, 7, or maybe, yeah, something like that, maybe, like, 12, I don't know, and then she travels around healing people, and also killing people, because she has, like, power over death in some way. Her magical power sort of extends in that direction, so I thought this was really good. It felt like a folktale, like, it's about a small child who has little to no autonomy in her situation, but she ends up becoming mythologized in this way due to her powers, which she didn't choose. So yeah, I think this was a really strong novella, and I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I read was The Ghosts of Sherwood by Carrie Vaughn. This is a novella in the first in a series called The Robin Hood Stories. This novella was so wonderful, and this series, I need more. I need more, because we're following the children of Robin Hood, and it's these three kids. One of the oldest sister, I'm the oldest sister, so like I really fucked with her. The oldest sister is like the responsible one, and she's like really practical. And then there's the middle brother, who is kind of like always, you know, tagging along with her. And then there's the youngest sister, the youngest sibling, who is mute, and she is also very clever, and their dynamic is wonderful. Their father, Robin Hood, is now sort of like integrated into the monarchy. Like he's like in charge of Sherwood, kind of, and he now has like a formal political position as opposed to, you know, being a rebel. Our main characters, the siblings, don't really know like how legitimate the stories of Robin Hood really are, but they know that their father and like Robin of Locksley is like the best archer in all of the land, and our main characters, the siblings, are also very good archers. The course of the story starts off with the mom, I'm forgetting her name, the lady and Robin Hood talking about whether their oldest daughter should like marry this guy, and they have like a fight over this. And then the three kids get like kidnapped in some sort of political maneuver, but these kids obviously know the Sherwood Forest like really well, and so the way that they get out of it is like really funny and like mischievous. And yeah, it's like this book is really about how legends are born, and the really sweet and funny like family dynamics that are really wholesome and lovely and delightful. So yeah, this was a 4-star read, and the next book that I read was obviously like the sequel to that, which is The Heirs of Locksley. Again, we're following the sibling tree, and they're adults almost. The next book in the series is The Heirs of Locksley, again by Carrie Vaughn, and we're following the three siblings as they are adults now, and after the events of like the kidnapping, and now they're going to this like gathering or something for like the king. It's interesting. It is a lot of developments come about, and we get to see the archery skills of the oldest daughter again, who is so badass, and I thought this was really sweet, and I just want another book in the series already. Oh my god. Yeah, another 4-star read. I thought these were adorable, and I love a retelling, and I love this type of story. The last book that I read in the month of November was another reread, and this is a 5-star reread. If you follow me on Twitter or Goodreads or anything, you already know, but like, the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I was doing some annotations because I want to do like a full review of this, like a breakdown of this, because I've done a lot of readings and like looked into N.K. Jemisin's like background and her interviews and stuff, and she's such like a politically and canonically and like sci-fi and literary informed author. Like, she is an author who reads, who is well read. This novel like really shows that. This series shows that to a degree that it's just spectacular. It's mind-blowing, and I really want to do an analysis of this from like a feminist, Marxist like perspective, like applying those systems of analysis and political theories, and seeing the ways that it sort of intersects with this book, the way that I did for The Midnight Lie, kind of. This book is set in a post-apocalyptic world where there are these things called seasons, where the earth like fucking just destroys itself for like 1,000 years or 100 years or whatever, and everyone just like needs to survive. And so there's many different ways of structuring society to try to help people survive. Not all of them are that effective, and there's these magical people called Origines who have control over the earth, and they're hated and feared within society. There's so much rich lore and characters and relationships that are built from scratch in this beautiful, beautiful way, and oh god, it's so brilliant. It's just so fucking brilliant, and I love this so much. And reading this a second time with like my highlighter, like girl, like this is and like putting my notes and stuff in my own notebook and in the margins of this book, like, I don't know, it's just so good. So yeah, that's the last book that I read in the month of November. So I read 23 books this month, not including All's Well, which I technically finished in this month. So like 24, not bad. 2 of them were rereads, both both 5-star rereads, and then 1 new 5-star book. So not the best in terms of like 5-star rating distribution, but I read so many good 4-star books and I read so many books. I'm quite ahead of schedule on my 200 books a year Goodreads goal. So that's fun and that's amazing. Last year I got to like maybe like 250, 270 books or something like that, but also we were in like the thick of the pandemic, so I didn't have anything other to do than to read, but now I kind of have to go outside and stuff for things, so it's a little bit harder to read at that level, but I still think I did a good job in November, despite everything, and it was a good reading month, and I had a good time. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that bullshit. Go follow me on social media if you want to. Go listen to my podcast if you want to. I will see you in my next video. Bye. Oh, also, this mug is from Anthropology, and also my cardigan from Free People, I'm pretty sure, and earrings and necklaces from Madewell. Also, my eyeshadow is Natasha Denona, and it's so pretty. I love the reflective shine. Anyway, I was just looking at my tea. I'm also drinking Tazo Earl Grey tea. So, yeah. Oh, and my lipstick is 2 of these Sephora lips combined. It's like the Sephora brand liquid lipsticks, which I really enjoy. And the shade is 118. And the other shade I use is 26, so anyway,